Welcome to the Golden Keys, a Twin Cities-based podcast. We are so happy that you found us. My name is Trent Zimmer, and alongside my wife Carissa, we've made it our mission to bring you, the listener, powerful stories, endless opportunities, and educational resources that will help you become the best version of yourself and ultimately lead you to living the happiest life possible. If you've ever gotten anything positive out of this conversation or this show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review and sharing this with just one friend. It's the best way for us to grow and make an impact on our community. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. All right, hello everybody. We have a very good friend of ours and also happens to be a mentor to us in business and in life. Her name is Alyce Dailey. She is, I had to write all these things down. She's a coach, a speaker, an entrepreneur, an author, a girl mom, a wife of 22 years. She's climbed Kilimanjaro, which I'm excited to hear about that. So jack of all trades and master of all of them.
Well, it's very generous.
Alyce, thank you for being here and giving us your time. We appreciate you.
Hey, so fun to be here with you too.
My first question for you, and I think we're going to spend most of our time together talking about the Magic Mom. If you're watching this on YouTube, you see the Magic Mom in her background and the purple glow of her shelves. She's got the purple light bulb theme. My first question would be, how did this become a thing for you that you became so passionate about that you wrote a book on it?
Yeah, so it feels like I'm in, you go through so many evolutions through life. So started earlier on selling real estate. So sold real estate for, and still do, in a more disconnected way, but still do, have our hands in real estate. But it's been almost 19 years, and kind of hit a phase where we're raising kids. We've been married for over 23 years now. Started having kids young, so I was 24 when we had our first, and we've got 4 girls, and they're 20, 18, 14, and 11. And it hit a phase where, which I think we all come to this place of, oh my gosh, did I climb all the ladders and I get to the top of all of these ladders? And it's like, is this really it? Because motherhood is it's busy, it's challenging. Building a business is busy and challenging. And one of the things I write in the book is that busy was a way that I behaved so that I didn't have to feel. I was so busy building businesses. I was so busy raising the kids and putting everybody else in front that I was afraid to stop, because if I stopped, I was actually afraid of what I was going to see internally. And the thing is, though, if you don't take those moments to stop, if you don't take the time to self-reflect, life will stop you. It won't be a stopping of your choosing. It will be a stopping of, your body will just give out, or your emotions, or so many things, like physiologically, because your body can't lie. It will figure out a way to stop you. And that's what happened to me in 2017, 2018. And I got to take a step back and say, what do I really want my life to be about? What's the thing that after, traveling the country, speaking on all these stages, what's the thing that people ask me about the most that I could talk about for a really long time and not get tired of it? And I was like, oh, well, that's easy. That's, how did you raise 4 girls that are curious and kind and adventurous and entrepreneurial? Like, how'd you do that? And that's really where the Magic Mom came from. So MAGIC is a framework, which is model, affirm, grace, inquire, and coach. And I didn't want to come up with like, here's how to parent. There's so many books on like, here's how to, 1, 2, 3, all the things. It wasn't any of that. It was, what's the framework that we used in our home that I could give to a mom and say, hey, look, here's a framework to think about how you want to show up in the world as a mom and how you may want to parent. So that's really how that was all born.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if I remember correctly, didn't this idea, the acronym at least, come to you in the middle of like a massage or some sort of like self-care moment?
It did. And it sounds like totally woo-woo when we say it, like, when I relay the story, but it was, having taken, like, I physically stopped showing up at the office. Like, I couldn't go in. I'm like, I can't talk to another client. I can't. And I'm like, I need to start taking care of myself. I would go to the chiropractor. I started getting massages, but I was the kind of person that would go to a massage and be like, I can't believe I'm wasting time here. This isn't even restful. Like, this doesn't even feel good. Like, why am I spending all this money? And like, I would fight it because my body didn't even know how to be, in that space, but I forced myself to keep going. So I don't know how many months in it was into it where I finally like was able to get into a space where it's like, okay, I can enjoy this and I can be,
Mhm.
and when you open up when that space opens up, it's like, oh, creativity comes back. I
Right.
didn't even realize that it was gone for as long
Mhm.
as it had been, and creativity came back. And literally in that one massage, it was like the whole framework was right there. Now, was that, 20 years of, all in the making to show up in that moment? Absolutely. But I wonder for
Right.
all of us, like, what is not coming into our lives right now
Mhm.
because we're running at unsustainable paces.
Yeah.
Yeah, we make everybody else's problems our problems, right? It's like checking the email.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
we like pull out you like subconsciously pull your cell phone out of your pocket and look at your notifications, your email
Yeah.
inbox, your text inbox. That is nothing more than everyone else needing things from you.
Mhm.
Mm,
And so that
mhm.
massage moment that you had was like you're
Yeah.
finally, especially because you and I are wired similarly in terms of
Yeah.
like go, right? Because
Mhm.
I was always the
Yeah.
same. If I laid down on a table, I'm like, I could be doing something now,
Mhm.
Could
which
be
is a
productive.
horrible way to go through life, but it provides you that space. And you otherwise you don't have that space because as an entrepreneur, mind
Oh,
fills their gaps.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think I'm like that too in a certain way. Like there was a Instagram reel that showed up on my feed the other day, and it was like when all your kids are napping on a Saturday afternoon, you have two decisions. One, to just sit down and do nothing, or two, to go as fast as you
Mhm.
can and get the laundry
Mhm.
done, the dishes put away,
Yep.
the meals
Yep.
prepped, the whatever, 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 and the list goes on. And I'm totally the one that like rushes to try and get every little chore
Yeah.
done because I know the second they open their eyes, and I want it to be about them, right? When they're awake, I want to be present. I want to be where I am in the moment. But it's also distracting when you have all these other things that are laying around.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I
For sure.
related to that and laughed. I was like, oh, that's hilarious. I'm opening up my book now, and it's uh natural that I have sticky fingerprints all over the cover.
That is a
I actually
mom's book.
read this when you launched it was it last year, right?
Yeah, it
Was it
was.
last year?
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I have all the boarding passes because I read them. We had like a bunch of fall
Yeah.
trips coming up, and I read it on the
Mhm.
plane. So I wanted
I
to
remember that.
remember. And this was our family trip to Arizona. So I have like a million boarding passes. So it's probably Hawkins' sticky fingers from the
Probably.
snacks that I was feeding him. But when I first started the book, I love how you included your daughters in that in the
Yeah.
book and magical notes from her daughters. That was a tearjerker for me. I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Um, something that I have highlighted over and over and over again that you talk about a lot in the book is what kind of adult do you want your daughter? You reference your daughter, but when I
Mhm.
was reading this, I just would replace the word with child,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yep.
no matter if you have a son or a daughter, it's the
Yep.
same message. But what
It
kind
is.
of adult do you want them to be? And what are you
Yeah.
modeling today as an adult for them?
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually start the book with a quote from Carl Jung, which is the greatest burden on a child is the unlived life of a parent. So you ask, most parents, what do you want for your kids? It's like, well, I want them to be happy. So I'll stop and ask, like, well, tell me about your mom. Was your mom happy? Oh gosh, no. My mom's the martyr. My mom's the one that would, eat last and like eat the scraps of like everybody else's
Yeah.
plate and just a martyr, right? Like I think we
Mhm.
all know women that have played this role of the martyrs. And yet they want for us to be happy, but that's not what's been modeled for most of us. So
Mhm.
if that's not what's been modeled for most of us, how do we expect our kids to just magically be happy?
Mhm.
They're looking it's not lost on our kids when mom's not happy. They know. And
Mhm.
they know when we're giving lip service to, well, I didn't do it this way, but I want I just want you to be this way. Just go be happy. And yet
Mhm.
we don't know how to do that for ourselves. And so I think part of, motherhood is this exploration and realization that my being happy as a mom is one of the greatest things that I can do for my kids
Yeah.
instead of being the martyr so that our kids will be happy. It's like, no, no, no. What makes mom happy? went and did the whole Kilimanjaro thing. Like my
Mhm.
kids were little, right? My oldest was 11 or 12 at the time, and leaving them for 16 days to go to Rwanda and Democratic Republic of Congo and Tanzania and to go do all of these things was like, there was a sacrifice on their part that it would have been very easy to say no to the opportunity.
Mhm.
And yet that was really a fulfilling thing for me. And it's one of the greatest stories that now our family tells about what everyone's experience of that was. So we
Mhm.
have opportunities to model for them. And then I think the flip side of that too is, who are our models as moms? Because I think we
Mhm.
forget to go find models for ourselves that, maybe you have a great mom that you want to model things after, but I bet she wasn't perfect. And there are other things that it was, like, hey, well, here are areas that I want to shore up
Mhm.
that weren't so great. So who are my models in these other areas that we can still now learn from?
Right. Right. That's super important. And also like who are we surrounding ourselves with, right? Like
Yeah.
who are our friends? Are they
Hmm.
relating to our present day? Um when I was reading this, I kept thinking about, my circle of friendships and also I have many, right? You have some from your college days,
Hmm.
some in your present life, some that have we're just now meeting, and each one is in a different phase of their life, and I realized that I have deeper relationships, or I can go deep quicker with those that I can relate to, because
Yeah.
when I'm surrounded by friends that don't have kids yet, or maybe they're on their way to, I feel like I'm holding back a lot of what's going on in my
Mm.
personal life, and it's more of
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like there as like, hey, surface level conversation. And then when you get surrounded by a group of people that are in it with you, it's like,
Yeah.
whoa, like that just completely changed the overall vibe and what I took away from it. And it's not all about
Yeah.
us, right? But like if you're going to take time away from your family to go to a girls' dinner
Hmm.
and have
Hmm.
conversation and fill your cup, you want it to be meaningful because those nights don't come often. Um,
Yeah.
so I loved
I
that
think
you
it's
talked
knowing
about
the
that.
intention, right? It's about the
Totally.
intention. Is my intention to mentor somebody else and to be a model and to pull them up? Or is
Yep.
now, am I in a season right now where I need to, to be pulled up?
Yep.
I need vision more for what the future is. And for someone to show me like, hey,
Mhm.
like life's more than the Cheerios on the floor and,
Yeah.
rinse and repeat and the groundhog day that parenting can feel like when you're
Mhm.
in the thick of it.
Yep.
What I'm getting is you have to be a little selfish. That's a good thing,
It
right? It's
feels
like
selfish.
yeah, it
It
goes
does.
back. It goes back to like the whole like put your mask on before assisting others.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
100%. And what she talks about in here too is just like, what are you modeling for your child? Like by getting up and getting them ready and their lunch is packed and taking them to school in your pajamas with no makeup on and just kind of being a hot mess. Okay, we're all going to have those days, right? And we need to give
Totally.
ourselves grace.
Yes.
Who knows what happened the day before? And if that is a repeat occurrence, I am now modeling that for my daughter Zoe, in that,
You
hey,
are.
I want you
Hmm.
to present yourself as a young mom in this manner.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when I know that I'm going to feel better when I get up and I get
Hmm.
ready and I have some time to self-reflect or give myself the white space with my cup of coffee before my
Yeah.
kids wake up, I'm going to be a different mom in that moment. And I'm going to be proud,
Yeah.
right? Cuz I'm pulling up to school.
Yeah.
I'm not like hiding behind my robe or my winter coat like, please don't make me come out of the car. Yeah, I'm proud to
Well,
be
you
their
you bring up
mom.
a good point about, just like packing the lunches and all the things. It's so because some moms we show love by wanting going to pack their lunch and have everything
Mhm.
ready. And it's like, well, I think there's seasons for that. And there's also seasons for, okay, how am I going to empower them and model for them that to take care of themselves? Okay,
Mhm.
what part of the lunch can they be responsible for every day?
Mhm.
What happens if a lunch gets forgotten? Do we run and like drop everything that we have? I'm like, well, I had a massage, but now I'm going to go run to school for a little, Sally to have lunch. There have been days where it's like that just wasn't an option, right?
Mhm.
And here's the thing, I were they hungry? Yes. Did they die? No. Um, and what's the likelihood they're going to forget again?
Yes.
They don't.
Right.
But if they
Mhm.
know that we're going to come to the rescue every time something like that happens, we're now creating, like we've modeled, hey, mom will drop everything for me when that happens. So we've
Mhm.
robbed them of the accountability. of, empowering them to take care of themselves.
Yeah. They'll remember the little pain that caused, and they'll not want that pain again.
They won't do it again, or they'll have a backup plan, or, and some kids, it takes them more times than others.
Yeah,
right?
for
I've got
sure.
one kid that it's like, yeah, she forgets, but then they become resourceful. They they figure things out in ways that we would never, it wouldn't happen if we keep getting involved.
Yeah. That's a really
Cool.
good point.
Okay, so model. We hit model. I think we hit that really good.
Yeah.
You better be who you want your kid to be.
Mhm.
Your first responsibility is yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And being, and I would say becoming, right? So
Yeah.
because a lot of us, we just feel like we're failing all day long, every day. It's like, I don't have any of it figured out, but am I on a path to becoming who I want them to be?
Growing, learning, coming from curiosity.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want them to be curious yourself.
Exactly.
And when we go on trips and it's work related, hey, like, yes, I'm getting on a plane to go to a conference where I'm going to learn XYZ. And you think that they're not picking up or following or understanding.
Oh, they are.
But they are. They for sure are.
100%.
So
Yep.
maybe not our Zoe quite yet. She worries me sometimes.
Yeah.
But oh goodness. Okay, so we got model.
Do we want to hit all 5?
I think let's just touch on each one of them. I think
we'll
that's
skim
good.
the top because we don't want to give away the goods.
Let's skim it.
Yeah,
totally.
We'll skim it. Okay, A.
Yeah.
Affirm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Affirm can look lots of different ways. I think I remember I'm dating myself with Saturday Night Live and a skit they used to do about affirmations, like, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. And I think that's what a lot of people have grown up with, thinking, affirmations are like these hokey little things that you say to yourself in the mirror. But I think what we need to take from that is that words are really powerful. And how are we affirming our kids, and how are we affirming ourselves as parents? Because we all have those little tapes that play in our heads, and there are things that we say to ourselves in our heads that we would never say to our children out loud. So why is it okay that we're saying it to ourselves? So what are the ways that we're being affirming of them, affirming ourselves? What are ways to counteract some of those negative voices? And think about the communities that we're in. What are the environments that we put ourselves in that are affirming? I don't think we think enough about the people that we surround ourselves with
100%.
when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
It's so important.
And grace, one of my favorite ones that I read about in this book, because I think you see, with social media now, I don't think I know, you see all of the highlights of everyone's life. And it paints this picture that every mom is just nailing it in every category. Yeah. She is creating caterpillar sandwiches and sushi rolls for the kids' lunches. And then my reality is like, slice of cheese, that's protein, right? Sure. Like, the reality. And then you get on social media and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm failing. Like, look at all of these holiday themed baskets. And oh my goodness.
I wish I was a Pinterest mom. That's never been my thing. I was the mom that that went to work so that I could hire people to do the Pinterest projects, because it just wasn't my jam, right? I mean, we're really good at having grace for our kids. I don't worry about that for most moms. I think we're really good with giving them grace. 100%. I think the hammer that we have in our hands to beat ourselves up, though, is so damaging. I think one of the coolest things about parenting is the opportunity to reparent ourselves in the process. To think about, what do I wish, if I put myself in their spot as a little kid, what do I wish somebody had said to me or done for me in that moment? What can I give now that I didn't get growing up? And then in those moments that are hard as an adult, it's like, okay, well, if I'm thinking about my own daughter when she gets to be in her 40s, okay, how would I want her to respond, or how would I want her to think about this situation? And then extend that to yourself, because if you would do that for your daughter, why wouldn't you do that for yourself?
Right. Absolutely. We're the hardest on ourselves.
We are.
Especially as a mom.
We are.
And then I also saw something, again, social media pop up on I think it was a quote or maybe a little like meme. and it talked about when a mom goes to bed and when a dad goes to bed. And the dad goes to bed and he's asleep in like 2 minutes, right? Like basically snoring.
Yeah.
That's assuming I get there and I don't fall asleep on the couch first.
And the mom goes to bed, she lays her head on the pillow and she is reviewing the day. And then
Yep.
she's reviewing the previous day. Then she's, oh my goodness, looking forward. Am I going to forget about this? Oh yeah, we have that coming up. So-and-so needs this. The hockey bag needs to be packed. Like we need to,
Yeah.
and just the mind races and races and races.
Totally.
And it gets to a point, it's like, I wonder if they're breathing. Hawken has a cold. Is he breathing okay? Should I go check on him? Should I check his pulse? Like you just
all the computer tabs that
all
are
the
open.
things. Yes, all of them. And then you start to worry, and then you have anxiety, which then raises your own heartbeat, which prevents you from sleeping, which is what you need most to wake up refreshed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is
Well, hey, the
so
first
true.
step is self-awareness.
Yeah, so at least I'm aware.
It sounds
Well,
like we've hit that.
I think this is also where dads can come kick in too, right? And start to help and ask really going into inquire, right? Like, how do we ask better questions so we know how to support each other? How do you support mom in these things? Because moms play this role where we are in unconscious competence with so many things that it's just easier for us to do them ourselves than to relegate them to somebody else.
Yeah.
So think about the times where, hey, I have an opportunity to go on a girls' weekend or to go out of town for a couple days. There have been so many times where I've been like, it's more work to get out of town for a couple days than it feels like it's worth. So I just don't even want to go anymore. When you start to make the lists of the drop-offs and the pickups and the this and the that. So, it kind of ties in really to all of these, but it's like mom needs time away. We send our kids to summer camp. Mom needs summer camp too, like 3 times a year at least, right? So how can, assuming there is a supportive spouse, I know that that's not always the case, right? But assuming or if there's not a supportive spouse, like what does your village, what does your community look like that you can support another mom in this to be able to get away? Because the getting away is so important, even if it's just like one overnight, even if it's local, for that self, for that reflection, because we know that growth doesn't happen in doing. Growth happens in times of self-reflection. And I think the reason we shy away from that time of self-reflection is because we're afraid of what we'll see.
Yep. You're absolutely right.
Sure. It's like when you don't have money and you got to look at your bank account. Remember that in college?
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
You're afraid at what you're going to notice about
like,
yourself.
am I going to eat or fill my car up?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or do I just really need that cup of coffee so that I can get that last paper done?
Yeah. So you mentioned the I as inquire, and you kind of touched on that briefly, but is that where you
So inquire is based on curiosity. I think the future, and you look at ChatGPT and all the things coming, right? And people that are fearful of it. And it's like, well, you can be fearful of it and fight it, or you can like embrace it and figure out, okay, what does this mean now for the future? And I think what it means is that the future belongs to people that know how to ask powerful questions. Because ChatGPT isn't going to create something, it can only reflect back. And so like prompt engineering is going to be a big piece of the future. Do we know how to create prompts and ask these powerful questions? So with our kids, looking at when we think we know the answer, I mean, I have this happen on a daily basis where my kid says something and I think I know the answer. I force myself, instead of giving an answer, to ask 3 questions in response. And what I typically find is that they have a way better answer than I ever could have come up with. And a question could simply be, oh, tell me more about that. What does that mean to you?
Yeah.
Huh, how'd you come to that conclusion? Because I'm far more concerned about how my kids think than what they think. Because if I know the processes that they go through of how they think and how they make decisions, I'm not worried when I send them out into the world. So we've launched 2 now into the world, and we've got 2 still at home. And people ask me all the time, well, are you, like you've got one living in Tulsa on her own, like she's bought a house and she's, working and she's to school, and she's always saying, like, are you worried? I'm like, no, because I know how she thinks. I've got another daughter that's in Peru right now for 6 weeks. I'm not worried about her because I know how she thinks. And that comes by asking really great questions.
That reminds me of
I have a question on that for later, but yeah, go ahead.
when we were recently interviewed, when we were looking at schooling options, because this book triggered me to rethink the difference of education and schooling and what I want for my kids. And I think, well, I know that because I've asked my parents, like when they sent my brother and I to school, it was just by default. Well, we live in this neighborhood and this is where you're going to go. And it's at the mercy of the school district to place you in the classroom that you're placed in. And that was it. And no
we
questions
didn't have
asked,
choices.
right? Like maybe every once in a while we were put into like small groups because we tested high on some test and, you know, they were creating a small group for us to grow. I don't know, but it wasn't unique to me. And so this book triggered me to start thinking about, well, the child in front of me that's about to go to kindergarten, what do I think he needs? What do I want his schooling and education to look like? Who do I want him to be surrounded by? What questions do I want them to be asking him or not? And what does that look like for our family? So we were asked the question, we were sitting in this room with this particular school and community, and they said, well, if you look back at your parenting journey and specifically your child's education, what does success look like to you? I was like, oh goodness. Here I'm like, I have a list of my questions. I wasn't expecting questions to be asked to us. I'm like, you know what? If one thing comes to mind and I have to answer this right now, I would say just what you said. If they can become independent thinkers, if they are not influenced by their peer or what's going around them, if they can take in whatever is happening or whatever was spoken into them and ask the right questions and think through it all, and then think independently about their viewpoints and how they feel and the next decision they're going to make. Because if they can be independent thinkers, I think it goes, I feel very confident in Gary Keller's famous saying, life is a series of decision-making moments. I feel confident that the good decisions will outweigh the bad if they can become independent thinkers.
100%.
Because you look back 100%. At all the bad decisions that you made, or quote unquote bad in the moment. They were all influenced by someone else.
Think about helicopter parenting. Helicopter parenting is nothing more than us making decisions for our kids and not believing that they know what's best for them. And you think about, you know, kids going off to college to find themselves, or all of a sudden they're going to make good decisions because now they're in college. Like, that's baloney. Like, why aren't we creating a safe environment at home and allowing them to make hard decisions while they're home, so that, hey, if little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. So I'll tell you, like, as the kids get older, that they have decisions to make, but the decisions are higher stake. So practice with the smaller stake stuff while you have them at home.
I love that.
Well, that kind of brings me to the question that I was going to save for later, since we haven't technically hit the C yet. But if I'm listening to this driving down the road, I've never heard of your story before, right? I'm biased because I've heard it, but how does somebody know they're winning? Like, I know your family, I know your kids, I know how successful and smart they are, and like, if I'm just driving, I'm like, how do I know if I'm being a magic mom? Or how do I know if I'm getting there? Like, how do you measure that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So I think one is you have to define what winning looks like for you and for your family, right? We started to define what winning looked for us in terms of, like, we would do family vision boards. Got a ton of stories around that. What success looked like for each individual child, because they are all white. I mean, all four of them, you look at me, you look at my husband, you're like, they look like you, but like, they are nothing like one another. So what does success look like for each individual, and how do we as a family rally around each one and have, me included, how does the family rally around mom? How does the family rally around dad to get to success, whatever that looks like? So I think we have to start defining what all of those things look like for ourselves. How do you know that you're on that path? I think it's because you're asking the questions. To even say, like, hey, am I on that path? Yeah, you probably are. It's the people that don't even ask the question that I get worried and concerned about, because I'm like, you're either growing or you're dying. There's no in between.
Yeah.
So choosing growth is choosing to be a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday. Yeah, you're winning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably mostly starts with looking inward.
Always starts with looking inward. Always.
It's fascinating to me.
It's kind of a bummer. I wish it wasn't like that, but it really just
Yeah.
is at the end
It's
of
so
the
much easier to
day.
point the finger at somebody else
It
all the time.
is.
Yes. Well,
is.
and getting to coach your next one, and I'm gonna kind of take this in a more literal way in reference to the coaches that are around my kids right now in athletics, and also, you know, their teacher. I look at their teacher as one of their coaches.
Yeah.
And our daughter just recently started competitive dance, and when I was looking at the coaches that were surrounding her, I mean, I was very confident she's in the right room. She's getting the right training, the right discipline, the right balance, right? Balance is a
Yep.
big thing, a big talk right now in competitive sports
Yep.
with young kids, because things are starting so much younger, it seems, these days. And kids are growing very fast. And maybe that's also because I'm on the other side of it, right? Not the student in the moment. But as I was looking at that, I was like, okay, what's the balance between too much pressure on her or teaching her discipline and hard work and what it takes to get to her goal? And so I was like battling with this, right? Because our daughter is all emotion, and if she doesn't do it the first time, she's like, oh, just throws herself on the ground, like, I'm never gonna be able to do this, like, oh. And so as a parent in the moment, I'm like, okay, I have one decision to make. I can show her empathy and in a way, or I can also show her a little bit of empathy, but also like, Zoe, it's going to take it's going to take 5 times, 10 times, 20 times. There's no rule around how many times it takes for you to get this one specific move. And that's okay. Everyone is different. And we are going to work really hard. I'm going to help you. I'm going to be there cheering you on. I'm going to assist you. Let's just slow it down and take one step at a time. And she now has, we started this thing, which I'm shocked that they haven't asked me about yet. But I'm like, it just means we just got to practice and work really hard. So she's learning her dances and she's practicing them every night. And I let her pick out a sticker, which is an emoji. On my phone, I have all of these emojis in my notes of the amount of times she's practiced. But I was waiting for her to ask, like, if I get 30, do I get a toy or do I get something? And she hasn't. She's just really happy to put down that sticker. I'm
All
like,
she does is pick an emoji.
That's
And-
amazing.
She doesn't physically get anything.
Those are the best. Well, enjoy that while you have it. Right?
Yeah, right.
Let me give you a spin on that. Like, here's how you can take that and layer it with the inquiry piece.
Mhm.
So how do you get to that same place, but instead ask her questions to get there?
Mhm.
Right. So obviously I don't know the whole situation or story, but I'm just thinking about, how many times who's your favorite dancer, Zoe? How many times do you think she did it before she got it right? And
Wow.
then just be quiet.
Yes. That's
And
good.
that sort of parenting takes far more intention and time and patience,
Mm-hmm.
but that helps them develop the critical thinking skills of,
Right.
oh, I guess they didn't get it on their first, maybe their second, maybe their third, and they'll come up with these amazing answers. Hell, well, hey, if you were going to get rewarded to do this, what could this look like? Let
Mhm.
them develop some systems around it, because they'll come up with things that, like, we never in a million years
Right.
thought of. And again, that's how you get into their brain, of how they think, how they're wired, what motivates them on really, like, low stakes things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because those same things you'll be able to layer into more important things later.
Right.
And these are all just clues that will show up again and again and again and again all the way throughout life. So wherever you find yourself as a parent telling your kids something, we're always telling them good things.
Right.
But how do we believe what we author? So our kids, as they are coming up with their own rules, they're going to be bought in. You don't have to sell them on it because they created it. So they think it's awesome. So what are ways that you can ask questions to get to the same result?
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think honestly, that's where the sticker thing came from, was because I learned in one of her tumbling classes that she gets a sticker when they
Yeah.
accomplish a new skill or they do whatever. And so whenever she walks out of tumbling class, and she always puts them on her forehead, I'm not sure why. She walk out with a sticker on her forehead. I'm like, oh, wow, she accomplished something. Like,
Yeah.
if I never asked a question, I would have never have known unless she just told me. But then I'm like, well, she's really motivated by these stickers or the
Yep.
whatever. So that's great.
Yep.
That's your motivation. And also a reflection for her too, I'm sure, is looking back at like, wow, look at the amount of times that I
Yeah.
practiced. And that's why I feel the way I feel. And that's why I'm confident going on that stage. And wow, my hard work, like I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I love
Anyways,
it.
always learning. And each kid is so different. Like Ezra
So
thinks
different.
differently. Zoe, and all four of your girls
I
are
was just gonna
very
say,
different.
you of all people, all four of yours are like completely
One
different.
is also
So
an
different.
author.
Yes.
But yes.
Right. Like I've got some kids that'll like read on their own. There's some that I pay to read.
Yeah.
Right. They're going to be different. They're just going to be different.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Okay, so let's talk about the virtual Magic Mom experience.
Okay. So
How can people
as
get to know you, your story, read your book, get involved in a community at a deeper level?
Yeah. So if I had to pick one word that my life is kind of about, it's community, and it's bringing people together, and in a sense, really bringing moms together, bringing women together. And so there have been so many Magic Mom book clubs that have like popped up all over the place. I think that it's something that's really well suited for community. And so what I started doing was Magic Mom one day experiences here at our home in Austin, and they've been phenomenal. And yet the thing that has been missing this whole time has been all the moms that are like, I'm like knee deep in all the things and I can't get to Austin. And so it's like, okay, how can we make this something that women from everywhere can come do? It's not going to be a super long-term commitment, yet get a grasp on like, okay, how do I get some of this magic, right? The model, the affirm, grace, inquire, coach. How do I master it and bring it into my home for myself, for my kids? How do I become a better mom and do it in community? Because gosh, I can't think of many things that are lonelier than motherhood.
Yeah.
Um, Adults, number one, have a hard time making friends. Like we're terrible at it, just as a whole. And when you enter motherhood, your friends tend to be like the moms of your kids' friends, and you just hope that they're cool.
Yeah.
And then like you try to like and then like if you try to have couple friends, like that's whole like next level stuff. Like because one of
Yeah.
them's usually cool, the other one you're a little bit like, no.
Yeah.
And if you don't really break out of some pre-constructed social norms, like you really don't meet very many new people in your adult life. So I wanted to create something where you're going to get to meet moms from all over that are similar to you, different than you, and yet we start to see their stories are so much the same. So the Magic Mom virtual experience is a 6-week experience, 90 minutes a week on Zoom, recorded if you can't make it yet. If you can make it, they're really powerful times where you're going to get to connect with other women. And we just dive deep into what magic is and how it applies to you. And the really cool part is that we've had women go through it that have little kids at home, have teenagers. I had one woman that's been to all of them, and she has 8 kids and they're all grown and out of the house. And then I've got moms that are women that are coming to me saying, hey, I'm scared about being a mom.
Yeah.
I want to come just to be around moms so that I can get rid of some of this fear. So we share so much and we have so much to learn from one another. So doing that in community has been amazing.
That's very cool. So if somebody wants to look into that, they can just go to your website, alycedailey.com. Is that right?
AlyceDailey.com. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, through the Zimmers, all the things.
Beautiful.
Yes.
I don't think I have a whole lot else myself, but do you have anything that you'd like to ask Alyce before we end?
Yeah.
Do you want to share your dentist story?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Share your
Carissa hadn't heard it yet.
No.
But I think, hey, that's a great way to know you're winning, the dentist story.
Yeah. It was a moment for us yesterday.
Yeah, share the dentist story.
I took our youngest to the dentist yesterday, and I was already like, nobody likes going to the dentist. I mean, it's not super fun. And this was Brielle, our 11-year-old, and we had a not great experience about 6 weeks ago going to the dentist. It was a doctor we didn't know at this practice. Anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. We were there for hours. I was pretty sure my child was never going to walk into a dentist's office again, and I didn't know what to do about it. So she needed, because they couldn't finish everything the last time, we had to make this follow-up appointment. Supposed to be super easy and routine.
Yeah.
One really easy cavity, a couple sealants, and we should have been done. And I was like, okay, we're just going to go again, and hopefully we'll have a different doctor and I'll be okay. So we walk in. Different doctor comes in. She's smiling. She takes my hand, introduces herself. Already we're like off to a great start. I'm like, I already like her better than the last one. And a couple things happen, and like Brielle's like, this hurts. This isn't right. I'm like, I don't even like, and I knew the doctor had done nothing. Like she hadn't gotten anything done yet. So she just cleans it up and she asked me to come and step into the other room. And I'm like, okay, this is where I'm going to get the talk of like, here are all the options, and you shouldn't do anything today. So she does. She gives me all the options. She suggested oral sedation and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh gosh, I know what I would choose, but I also knew, you know what? She's a really smart, intelligent 11-year-old girl that if this doctor just talked to her, she could make her own decision. How many times do we want to make the decision for our children because we think we're keeping them safe? Right. Because the doctor is like, hey, if it was my daughter, here's what I would do. I would go home. We'll reduce the anxiety. We'll give her all this stuff. We'll put her under, and like, because she needed 2 teeth pulled is what we found out that we weren't expecting yesterday. And I'm like, yeah, all of this is a lot. And I said, you know what? She's a really intelligent 11-year-old. Why don't we go back in and why don't you talk to her and ask her what she'd like to do so she can weigh the options? And the doctor was a little bit like, oh, okay. Because she fully expected me to give the answer. Yeah. And we were going to be on our way, which could have worked. Nothing wrong with that. And you want to be a magic parent? Right. We try things differently. I didn't know how it was going to go, right? So the doctor walks in and she looks at it, and I said, I just said, hey, Brielle, we're just going to talk and we're going to, we're going to figure out what is best for you. So we're empowering her to make this decision. And so she gives her the options, and Brielle is pensive about it. And she thinks, and she says, I'd like to do all of it today. I do remember that last time they put something different in my mouth that didn't hurt like the last one did, but they got it from a different room. Can you figure out what that was for me? Because if you get that, it won't hurt like it just did. And they looked at each other and they're like, oh, she's right. We have a pediatric size, whatever thing to hold her mouth open that they had forgotten about. They didn't even know, but she remembered from last time. And she's like, that didn't hurt. Can they go get that? And then she said, and I want a hand signal for, hey, if you're going too fast, or I need you to stop for a second. I just need a hand signal that you'll stop. I just need to know that. She said, okay. And I kid you not, 30 minutes later, they pulled 2 teeth. She didn't flinch. She had a little remote. She's watching TV. They're going on with the whole thing. And I'm like, I couldn't believe it. Like internally, I'm like, you're like, oh did they just pull 2 teeth and fill a cavity? Like in the last 30 minutes? The doctor couldn't believe it. Internally, I was like, I can't believe it, but I'm just going to like keep my emotions in check. And I looked at her and I'm just like, I'm so proud of you. So how many times do we underestimate our own kids? And if we're underestimating our kids, you better believe that people around us are too.
Totally. I love that story so much.
That's a great story.
It reminds me of, I recently heard a story about Japan and their culture and how they send their like 5-year-olds to run errands to the grocery store and get like whatever they need. And they wear these, I think it's like a yellow band on their left arm or something to signal that they are a child, which I mean, you can see, but they're also on a mission and helping their family. And they're in their culture, everyone around them, the community, if you saw a kid with a yellow band on his arm walking down the street, it's your duty to look out for him and make sure that he's safe and whatever. And I understand that America is a very different culture. Some of us have the luxury of walking to the supermarket. Some do not. We also have very different crime rates than Japan, specifically Tokyo. I think that's where the story came from. But anyways, I was just shocked by that. I'm like, oh my goodness. And in this book, you talk about, I believe it was Annika or one of your daughters who traveled alone for the first time at an
We
age
do,
that I
yeah.
feel like most parents would be like, no, I'm not allowing my daughter to go on an airplane and travel to another city and get to their destination. Or another story of, I think it was Carissa. She also has a daughter named Carissa, and getting to a hotel room to the conference center that you guys were at.
Yeah.
And it's stories that like that's put me in a position, like the decision you had to make at the dentist, where it's like, I'm probably making a lot more decisions for my kids than I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if
Mm-hmm.
my child got put in New York City and they had to get from point A to point B, how confident am I that they could do that?
That they could
Are
do
they
it.
willing, confident,
Yeah.
able to ask questions to other adults? Do they feel comfortable? If they're nervous or scared, do they know where to go? Do they know that maybe looking down at their phone at the map or whatever is not probably the safe decision, and maybe they should jump into a hotel lobby or a coffee shop or a bookshop and figure out where they are and where they need to go so they look confident on the streets? I don't know. And so it just kind of makes you think about, okay, yes, you can make your job easy by making all these decisions for them and just get on with your day, or take the time to ask them the questions, or in your case, have a professional talk to your child and weigh out the options and let them make the decision for themselves. Because guess what, Brielle, she's now feeling very empowered, I'm sure, and
She
is
is.
like, heck yeah, I could take myself to the dentist. I'll just order myself an Uber. Like, like she's like on cloud 9 right now. She's like, I don't need mom. Where's my insurance card? I got this.
I love it. I love
What you
it.
just described made me think of Kevin McAllister.
Home Alone.
I mean, if you're lost in New York City, go into a hotel room. I'm like, oh, there's a movie about that.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That was before its time. Didn't even know it. Yeah, just think of the little ways that you can empower your kids, right? It might be as simple as, and it takes longer. All of these things take longer in the moment. It's just they pay dividends in the future. So things like give them a couple items and have them go to the self checkout at the grocery store.
Yeah.
Right. Low barrier, right? Nobody's gonna get hurt. You're still there. But they get to ask questions on how to do things. So wherever you are in the parenting journey, what's that next step for you look like? What could that next step for you look like? That just gives them a little bit more latitude.
Yep.
Awesome.
Ours was letting our kids order their
French
meal.
fries at the club.
Yeah, the other day. They were like, well, and if you notice, most waiters and waitresses, when you have young children at the table, will come to the mom and say, are you guys ready to order? What would they like? And I looked at this one specific waiter and I said, I'll have this. And then I was like, okay, I pointed to Trent and he was kind of like, well, so he like went to Trent and then I go, Ezra, tell him what you would like. And so then Ezra ordered his meal. Of course, their voice is, a little bit lower. They're not at that confidence level. He kept talking. He's like, chocolate milk.
Yes, all the chocolate milk.
Yes.
Please.
But it's just, yes, it may have taken a couple extra minutes for him to get around the table, to get everyone's order, ask some questions.
So worth it.
But hey, so worth it.
Yep.
And it didn't take a ton of effort from us.
Nope.
So
not at all. Thank you so much for your time. This was a great conversation.
Please order the book. And if you need a copy, we still have, we ordered a box when
maybe
the book.
Maybe the first few people who comment or something, we can send a copy of the book out.
I've been holding them on because you know what? It's a great gift when I'm going to my girlfriends for mom's dinner night out, or as their school now has some things, like I'll throw one in my purse and be like, if I go have a conversation with someone that I feel like could use this book, like I'm going to have it ready to go.
Yep.
So
it's a great way to build community. So find a couple girlfriends, pick up a copy of the book and a glass of wine and have at it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Love it. Thanks, Alyce. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.